Today's lecture is about a poem. The name of the poem is The Owl Critic. This poem is written by James Thomas Fields and presented by us-Sahar. The writer James Thomas Fields was an American publisher, an editor, and a poet. When he was only 14 years old, he started working at a famous bookstore. Staying there at that bookstore and working there actually was very good for him because he learned a lot, read many books, and all that reading was very useful to him because his poetry flourished and got much better after working at the bookstore. He first published a poem in Portsmouth Journal in 1837, but after some time he became more popular when he wrote a poem by the name of Anniversary Poem, and he gave that or dedicated that poem to the Boston Library Association. The Owl Critic is a poem that shows the plight or the condition of those people who cannot keep themselves from criticizing everyone and everything. Some people are naturally such persons that they would find fault in everything, and finding fault will lead them to show off much more, like they would say that they are experts in everything and they know much better than everyone else, and they would try to make everyone uncomfortable and show them that they are more expert than the owner of a thing or anything else. So this person who is the Owl Critic is a young man. The setting of the story, or we can say this narrative, this event, is a barber shop. We know that in the barber shops many people assemble, and one person is getting his haircut or something and the other people are waiting for their turn, and all the other people are talking between each other. When there were no social media and such things, the barbers were those people who had every news of the town or all around, and they distributed news as well. So people like to go to the barber shop and sit there and discuss the current affairs and other things with the barber. This setting shows an old fashioned barber shop. A barber is working on a man and other people are sitting around. When that young man who thinks that he knows everything, he is Mr. Know All, appears, that young man is talking, he is speaking to the barber, and he is telling him that how a decoration in his shop, that is an owl, a bird, a big bird that has been stuffed after killing maybe, and that owl, according to the young man, is not properly stuffed. Young man keeps on saying and finding faults in the stuffing of the owl. The owl is a bird that has been stuffed with some material to make a decoration piece of. And the young man says that the stuffing is not good and someone very immature and non-expert has done it. And he keeps on goading the barber that you should stop keeping it here because it is pathetic. It is not a very good work of art. Now we start the poem. The Owl Critic. Who stuffed that white owl? The question is asked by the man that who has stuffed that white owl that is kept in the corner of the shop. No one spoke in the shop and no one answers him. The barber was busy and he couldn't stop. Barber was working, he was not free, and he did not stop to answer the young man. The customers waiting their turn were all reading the Daily, the Herald, the Post, little heeding the young man. All the people who were there in the barber shop as customers, they were sitting and reading newspaper. Different newspaper by the names of Daily News or Herald or something Post. They did not care what the young man said. Who blurted out such a blunt question? The young man had asked this question quite suddenly. He had not thought it over. He had not stopped to look around. He just rapidly asked the question that why this owl is there. It is not a very good work. And the barber, no one raised a head. and no one looked up to see the young man what he is asking, even made a suggestion, and no one even suggested something. The writer here wants to say that all the people sitting in the shop are totally neglecting the critic, and they do not care what he is saying, and what can be the reason behind it we will see at the end of the poem. And the barber kept on shaving. The barber kept on working on the shave of a man, a customer who was sitting in the chair. Don't you see, Mr. Brown? Cried the youth with a frown. How wrong the whole thing is. How preposterous each wing is. How flattened the head is. How jammed down the neck is. Now that young man keeps looking at that owl, and he keeps finding faults one by one. He says, Mr. Brown, which is the name of the barber apparently, he says that look how wrong this job has been done. Each wing is mispositions. And he says that the head is flat, it is not round in shape. And he says that neck is also totally invisible. What a bad work this is. In short, the whole owl, what an ignorant wreck is. I make no apology, I have learned owliology. The young man keeps on talking. He says that the whole owl is a very terrible work. He says that I would not ask forgiveness for my opinion. He says that I have learned the knowledge of the owls and I know a lot about them. I have passed days and nights in 100 collections and cannot be blinded to any deflections. The young man keeps on saying that I have passed a lot of time in the collections of stuffed owls in the museums or maybe Botany Museum somewhere else. He says that I cannot turn a blind eye to the defects in this work, arising from unskillful fingers that fail to stuff a bird right from his beak to his tail. The young critic says that someone very unskillful, someone who was not an expert at his job, he has done it. And he has destroyed the bird completely from his beak to his tail. Totally whole project is a failure. Mr. Brown, do take that bird down or you shall soon be laughing stock all over the town. Then he turns to the barber again. He says, Mr. Barber, take this bird down, throw it away, because everyone in the town will laugh at you after some time because this work looks very stupid. And the barber kept on shaving. The writer repeats that the barber does not even look at the critic. He keeps working. Whatever he is doing, he is busy in that, and that shows that he actually doesn't care what the critic is saying. I have studied owls. The critic keeps talking. He says that I have studied the birds that are called owls and other night fowls and other birds who fly at the night like bats and other ones. And I tell you what I know to be true. He says to the barber that I will tell you a truth. An owl cannot roost with his limbs so unloosed. He says that when an owl sits on a tree, his position is not like this one. No owl in this world ever had his claws curled, ever had his legs slanted, ever had his bill canted, ever had his neck screwed into that attitude. The critic says that position of the claws, the feet of the owl is wrong. He says the position of the legs is wrong. He says that his beak is also badly made. Then he says that his neck is turned, which is not natural in an owl. He can't do it because it is against all bird laws. The critic says that owl cannot sit in this position because this is against the natural laws of the bird. He is sitting in a very unnatural position. Anatomy teaches, ornithology preaches, and owl has a toe that can't turn out so. He says that when you study anatomy or you study the knowledge of the birds, you know that an owl cannot sit in this position, in the position this one is sitting. I have made the white owl my study for years, and to see such a job almost moves me to tears. The young critic says that white owl is my favorite topic of study. And when I see this stuffing, I feel like I am going to cry because it is so weird, it is so strange. Mr. Brown, I am amazed. You should be so gone crazed as to put up a bird in that posture absurd. He says to the barber that I am surprised to see. Are you mad that you have put up a bird that looks so stupid? To look at that owl really brings on a dizziness. The critic says that when you look at this bird, suddenly your head starts swimming. The man who stuffed him don't half know his business. The man who had stuffed this owl, he did not know that how to do this thing. And the barber kept shaving. The poet emphasizes that the barber is not even listening to the critic. He keeps on doing his work. He does not turn around. He does not notice what the critic is saying. And the critic keeps on talking. Examine those eyes. I am filled with surprise. Taxidermist should pass off on you such poor glass. He says that look at the eyes of this owl. And I see that the people who make the glass eyes for stuffed animals, can they make such poor glass eyes? They don't look real, they don't look natural. The eyes that have been put in the head of this owl are very badly made. So unnatural they seem, they would make Audubon scream and John Burroughs laugh to encounter such chaff. The critic says that eyes are made so unnatural that the great people, the artists who stuff the birds beautifully, if they look at them, they will just laugh at them. And they cannot look at this owl without laughing. It is so absurd. Do take that bird down, have him stuffed again brown. The critic says that take that bird down and after that send him for being stuffed again because it is not done in a very well way. And Mr. Brown is again kept on shaving. He keeps on shaving. He does not look around, does not reply to the critic. His silence is very meaningful, but the critic does not once stop to think that why no one is replying him, why the barber doesn't care what he is saying. Most fault finders are like that. When they start going, they do not look around and think what the other people must be reacting. And they are so full of themselves that they think that their opinion is the real opinion, the right opinion, true opinion, and all the other people are stupid. The critic keeps on saying, with some sawdust and bark, I could stuff in the dark an owl better than that. He says that if I had some material and I could make an owl look much better even in the dark, I am such an expert in the stuffed owls that I would do it in the time of night and darkness and I would do it better than this one here. I could make an old hat look more like an owl than that horrid fowl. He says that if I had an old hat, I could turn it into an owl by my handiwork, by my expertise, and it would look more like an owl than that horrible bird that you have set up there. Stuck up there so stiff like a side of coarse leather. And he says that bird is sitting there like it is a piece of leather. In fact, about him there is not one natural feather. Critic says that it is a very unnatural looking bird. All the feathers are even wrong. Just then with a wink and a sly normal lurch, the owl very gravely got down from his perch. The critic is suddenly silenced. He is looking at the owl. He cannot believe his eyes. The owl moves. The owl, the critic thought, was stuffed. It was not stuffed. It was not dead. It was a real owl, a living, alive owl. And he, the owl, is looking at the critic now. The owl gives a wink. He shuts one eye. And a sly normal lurch. It moves its body around very cleverly. Very gravely got down from his perch. Where the owl was sitting up on a stand, he got down from the stand. Walked around and regarded his fault-finding critic. The owl walked a little and looked at the critic very carefully, who thought he was stuffed. And the critic is looking at the owl with his eyes open and mouth open as well. He doesn't know what to say now because he sees that owl is no longer stuffed. with a glance analytic. The owl is looking at the critic very carefully, like he is analyzing him, judging him, thinking what sort of person he is. Then fairly hooted as if he should say, and then owl made a sound. The sound of the owl is always called a hooting. So he hooted and he made a like two hoo type of sound, and it looks as if the owl is saying to the critic, your learning is at fault this time anyway. He is telling the critic that you must be a very learned person, but you were at fault there. You were wrong here. Don't waste it again on a live bird, I pray. And I request that please do not use your intelligence over a bird that is alive again. I am an owl. Owl seems to say that I am an owl, you are another, and you are also an owl because you have behaved very stupidly. Sir Critic, good day. So, Sir Critic, bye bye, farewell. And the barber kept on shaving. And the barber did not even talk now, he kept on shaving. When we stop reading this poem in the end, we realize that this is the way the fault finders should be dealt with. Everyone in the world will try to make you feel uncomfortable, make you feel unworthy, try to belittle you, try to make you feel as if you are not better than others, you are worse than others. So how to deal with them? Let them talk and do not reply, and do whatever you're doing continuously without stopping for 1 minute, and do not take into account the stupid suggestions the people give you. The people who cannot do anything, they would always suggest the things to those people who are trying and doing things. So the best attitude to a fault finder, to a critic, is that of the barber, that he keeps on working. He doesn't stop, he doesn't reply, he doesn't answer, and he keeps on working his work on his job. The critic is obviously now very ashamed, very mortified. Everyone would be looking at him that what a stupid person he is, that he did not realize that the owl there was actually a real bird. And the critic was saying that all his wings are wrong, his position is wrong, his eyes are wrong. And finally everyone saw into him, saw through him that how stupid he himself is. He himself is more stupid than an owl. The poem makes use of satire and humor. Satire and humor are two types of humor. Laughing at someone, and the humor is light-hearted, while satire is more serious. The poem is using satire and humor to point out the absurdity of fault finders. The poem shows that people who find fault in everything, they are absurd, they are strange, they are not normal. So they should not be notified, they should not be taken care of, and no one should care what they are saying. The poet shows overconfidence of a shallow person who criticized for the sake of criticism. Poet shows that the critic here is a very shallow person, and he is criticizing the owl without knowing anything about the stuffed birds or real birds at all. He is just criticizing because he wants to find faults in everything. Such attitude is not good, and here it is condemned and disliked. Later the critic is humiliated, which serves him right. In the end we see that justice is served, and the critic is very ashamed, he is humiliated. Everyone has come to know that he actually does not know anything about birds or stuffing or the art of making birds look real at all. So this punishment is enough for him, that he is no longer reliable and no one trusts him. Thanks for watching. Best wishes for your studies.